Welcome back, Integrous Women. This is Leilani from Be the Change HR with our course HR101 for startups. So we talked about mission, vision, and values, and then we also talked about laying that HR foundation before you bring that first employee on board. And so now we are ready to staff. And so we'll go over some best practices and how you can do that properly. So smart hires will lead to less fires and all kinds of fires. And I talk about other fires, I mean terms and lawsuits and that type of thing. You want to be sure that you hire the right talent right out of the gate. It can negate so many issues for you as a small business if you make a right hire in the beginning. And so we'll go over the steps on how to do that. You also want to make a right hire because you don't want turnover, right? Turnover is super expensive. And so here is a study that found the average cost to replace an employee at different levels. So our first example is someone who makes $10 per hour, right? So it's 16% of the annual salary for a high turnover, low paying job, earning over $3,000 a year for $30,000 a year, for example. The cost to replace someone who makes $10 an hour would be $3,328. That is a lot of money for someone who's making that low wage. It goes up, though, when you talk about management positions. So 20% of annual salary for mid-range positions, earning between $30K and $50K. So the example is the cost to replace a $40K manager would be $8,000. And then finally, the most expensive is our C-suite, our executives. It could be up to 213% of an executive's annual salary, the cost to replace them. So a CEO who makes $100K, and we know that CEOs make way more than that usually, is $213,000. So you want to make sure that we make decisions about hires right from the get-go so we can save you money and not have these expenses. So the best way of losing money on turnover is hiring right. And you need to determine, who you need to hire. So you need to know what positions are needed the most for your business. It depends, of course, on what type of business you have, but here's your essential departments: human resources, operations, accounting, marketing and sales, and legal. So figure out what can you outsource to save money, and also liability, because employees, of course, come with liability. Maybe you can outsource your HR, maybe you can outsource your accounting, marketing, sales, definitely your legal, but maybe not your operations. So you need to determine, who do I need to hire? And then at that time, figure out how much can I afford, what's our budget. A really good resource you can look into to evaluate if the salary you're offering is competitive is the BLS, Glassdoor, and salary.com. But a little bit more on that. You want to make sure that you hire the right people and you pay them properly. And so you just don't want to throw out an arbitrary number. I'm just going to pay them $15 an hour and hopefully they'll be happy for a certain position. It's always really, really good to have data behind that. So if you have data behind that, okay, what range in the market am I going to pay this person? 25 percentile, 50 percentile, higher than that? And there's resources that you can do that with. So the first one is the BLS. BLS stands for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the BLS is a government website. They get information from companies around the United States, and they can drill down all the way to the local level. So if you live in a major metropolitan area, they will have information on jobs in that area, how much people are paying. It's really, really valuable information. So that would be my first pick, go into the BLS. It is difficult to navigate to get around in there, but it's, I think, the best data you can get. Glassdoor also has a salary piece to it. You can look up salaries on Glassdoor. The problem with that is that it's user-based. So the users in Glassdoor give the salaries. They take all those salaries in an area and tell you on average what someone makes. There's also salary.com. So salary.com, you can use a portion of it for free, which is always nice. If you really want to drill down employer size, industry, then you'll need to pay. But the free piece is really nice. So you could always use that and then figure out, okay, what is a competitive salary? What am I going to pay my people? Because, of course, you don't want any turnover. All right, so you figured out, okay, I need this position. This is how much I'm going to pay. Now I need to tell the world I'm looking for someone. Of course, networking is always best, but if you go to market with a job posting, this is how that you should do it, the best practice. you want to write a job description first. I know you want to get creative and go straight to the job ad, but the job description is really important. It communicates what the job entails. It outlines what it takes to do the job. So what are the requirements? What are their education? What skills does this person need to have? You know, how many years of experience do you want them to have in certain roles or positions or in the industry? It's really important. And then there's a piece of the job description that HR people like me know are very essential. So not only is it the essential functions and the requirements, but the work environment and the physical requirements. Work environment is where are they working? Are they working in an office? Are they working outdoors? And the physical requirement is something that we use in various situations like workers' comp claims and ADA claims. And so what the physical part will say is maybe it's a warehouse worker and it says, okay, this person needs to be able to lift 50 or more pounds. You can take that job description and deny someone employment if they're unable to do those things. And so it's important to have that in there. And then of course the acknowledgments, you know, they acknowledge that they're able to do the job once they're hired though. And I'll give you ladies an example of a job description. I'm also going to give you something called a job description questionnaire, which will help you formulate your job description. So it's going to ask you questions. So you just don't have to, you know, try to go Google on the internet. I'll help you out. And so what you do is you take the job description and you make it an ad. And this is where you can have fun and be creative with it. You know, say something like, we're looking for the newest member of our team. Come join us. We're awesome. Or you want to work with us type of thing. And then underneath that, you're going to put the summary and the essential functions and the requirements and the physical demands of the job. And maybe if they're going to travel, you want to communicate all that. All right. So job posting do's and don'ts. Do make it fun. I love writing stuff into the job ad, like what I was saying, like, you know, colorful way of talking about the company. Maybe at the end, I always like to ask a random question. What are you watching on Netflix? What book are you reading right now? Just to see people's fun answers and also to see if they are paying attention to your job ad. You want to add the summary, essential functions and requirements of the job. And you want to make sure you give clear submission instructions. A lot of the times they'll say no phone calls, please. You know, email your resume and your cover letter or example of your work or whatever you want them to give you to a certain email. Don't ask people questions you shouldn't ask them, right? Don't ask them, are you married? Where do you live? Have you committed a crime? Are you planning on getting pregnant? Basically anything that's in a protected class. You don't want to ask any personal questions like that. You don't want to give out the hiring manager's info. If it's a really popular job and you think you're going to get a lot of traction on it, you give that person's name away, they're going to start bothering them. So I wouldn't do that. And then don't be vague. Don't be vague. You know, I see some job postings out there that don't have detail in it. You really want to tell them, you know, this is what we're looking for in our next hire. So talking about job posting sites, some of them can get really expensive. So we talk about like LinkedIn, hundreds of dollars, Career Builder, hundreds of dollars, Monster, Dice, all those are quite expensive. If you can avoid going to those sites, I would recommend these. So Indeed has a free posting option. If you're recruiting for a general position, let's say an administrative assistant, an accounting manager, you can use Indeed for free, and I promise you, you will get results if your job ad is written properly. I just posted for one of my clients for a recruiting coordinator, and we generated 70 resumes for $0. You can use Indeed. Another really amazing one is your college board. So if you graduated from college, always, you know, go and check out with the alumni if you can post a job. But every single university out there has a job board, and the job board 9 times out of 10 is free. And so that's a really, really great way to source people who are eager and hungry in their career and looking to get started. ZipRecruiter is inexpensive. That is $99. I think 30 days, you post a job. It's kind of the same as Indeed. So it crawls out onto the internet and finds all the jobs and brings them back, and then also gets jobs by having people sponsor jobs. And finally, Craigslist. I do have some clients who use this, and it's very beneficial for them. Some people are kind of against it. They think it's creepy. It's your preference, but a Craigslist job ad can be anywhere from $0 to $40, and that's really inexpensive. So once you post that job ad, it's time to interview, right? And so how do you do this? So this is the order that I recommend. It's really exciting to, interview people and start to think about bringing someone on board, but you don't want to waste your time. And once you screen through all the resumes and you find the ones that you like, the first step is to do phone screens. I do them in quick 15-minute increments. And I promise you, if in that time, you can definitely get to know that person, their skill level, their personality. When I do a phone screen, I tell them, hey, thank you for your time. Just take me, we'll jump right into it. Take me through your resume. Tell me whatever you like about your career. And if I have any questions, I'll jump in and ask. And that you get a really good idea for the person's, work history and their personality, and if they're going to be a cultural fit. Do you want to assess if the person meets the minimum requirements? Do you have the X amount of years that we said we needed? Are you a cultural fit? And then if you want to meet this person in person, which brings us to our next section. In-person interviews. So there's different ways to do this. You can do a video interview. That's good for remote. It saves time. In-person interviews, once you decide to bring someone in, you could do one-on-one. You could do a panel. I do suggest, though, that when you do this, you have at least 3 people interview. You want, of course, the hiring manager, maybe an executive, and then a lateral person. So mixing up the diversity of who's interviewing. And maybe include a person who wants to learn how to interview. That's always fun, too. If someone has never interviewed before, you give them the tools necessary to do so, which I'll be providing for you, a list of great questions to ask, and they can kind of get their feet wet and learn how to interview, which is really exciting to teach someone how to do that. I use a rating scale when I do recruiting with a team. And I like this because I have everyone do this on their own without input from anyone else. And so you rate before you start talking about the candidate. And here's my rating scale. 1, I would never hire him. 2, I would never hire him, but I could be talked out of it. 3, I would hire, but I could be talked out of that. And then 4, I would definitely hire. And so it's fun to see, okay, what did you rate them? Why did you rate them that? Once you discuss it, and that's a really good way of, forming your own opinion without, influence from someone else, and then, making a decision as a team. Behavioral-based interviewing. So this is a technique that you can use. And in a nutshell, behavioral-based interviewing is a method used to see how someone would handle or has handled a given situation. It's how they would behave. It's best in these scenarios to ask questions after the answers to drill down on the subject. So once you ask them a question, give me an example about a time you did not reach a goal, and then they tell you, dig deeper. Well, and how'd you feel about that? And what were your next steps? And, have you ever used what you've learned there in the future? Those types of things. This will give you a great idea of what the person knows, because if you ask technical questions, you need to drill down on those, and if they're telling the truth. A handful of times I've done some behavioral-based interviewing, and the person starts to kind of stutter and not really know what they're talking about. It's like, oh, you're fudging it right now. So it's really good technique. So here are some 10 awesome interview questions that I just love. The first one is, tell me about you and your career. I say start wherever you like, and I'll jump in if I have any questions. Like I mentioned before, I have my resume in front, and I just follow along. It's a great question. And then, have you ever worked with a colleague that you didn't get along with? How did you handle it? What is your biggest pet peeve? Tell me about a time you worked with a difficult client. What was the scenario? How did you handle it? What is your proudest professional achievement? This is amazing because you get to see someone beam on what they've done, it's really important. Tell me about the very first job you had. What did you learn from it? How do you keep yourself on task? What are your tricks for time management and project management? You can ask, give me an example of your written communication. How do you draft an email? Have you ever written an article, white paper, or blog? I can't tell you how many times I've had owners tell me, like, my workforce doesn't know how to write an email. We need to work on their, their skills. And I'm like, you should have checked that in the beginning. Here's another one. Tell me about your worst or craziest boss. How did you handle him or her? That'll show you some EQ. And then what motivates you? All right, so interviews. You make a final decision and you onboard your new hire. Remember, diversity is very important. Make sure your workforce is diverse with different people. Of course, it's against the law to exclude anyone, but it's really beneficial to have people of different backgrounds and diversities in order to add to your company and your culture. And here's something that I've always said, it's always 80% cultural fit and 20% skills, knowledge and ability, right? And so what I mean by that is you can have someone who has all the bells and whistles and all the degrees you want and all the skills that you want, but if they don't match your culture and your team, it's not going to work out. If you have someone that is a great personality and character fit, who values what your company values, and but they lack some skill, I would bank on that person before I bank on the one that has all the skills. So now that you have a few employees on board, we got to talk about what it's going to take to keep them. So in our next section, we're going to talk about staying competitive. All right, ladies, I will see you on the next module.